Hi, everyone. It's Professor Muldrow again. And now I'm going to show you two more things in Java. One is how to use strings, and the other will be how to get input from the user when you run your program. First, let's talk about strings. As you can see on this slide, you can declare a variable of type string. In Java, the word string must begin with a capital S. That's what the Java compiler requires. Like any other variable, you must give it some type of name. And if you're going to give it a value when you declare it, you must put that value in quotation marks, aka double quotes. So for example, here in this program that you see here, I've created a string variable named Beatles, and I've set it equal to the string John, Paul, George, Ringo. Now, what you must understand about strings is, unlike int and double, string is not a primitive type in Java. It is an object. And since it's an object, that means there are built-in functions that you can call for a string variable. Before I get to those, one more thing I should mention. Each individual character in a string is assigned an index, also known as a position number. Here's what you must remember. The first character of a string always gets index 0, always. The last character of a string, its index value is the length of the string minus 1. So in the case of the string on this slide, A period Davis, and there is a blank space between the period and the capital D, letter A is the first character, it gets index 0. The blank space is part of the string since it is within the double quotes. And then the letter S, which is the last character in the string, is assigned an index of 7. The string has a total of 8 characters, and 8 minus 1 is 7. So that is the index of the last character of the string A Davis. So in general for strings, the index of the first character is 0. The index of the last character is the length minus 1. Now about those methods for strings. You have several of them, one called index of that returns the index of a character. There is the length method that tells you how many characters are in the string. You have a to lowercase, which returns the string with all lowercase letters, a to uppercase, which returns the string with all uppercase letters. Then you have two versions of the substring method. I'll explain those when I run this program that I have. As you can see here in part 1, I'm calling the length, the index of, the to uppercase method, and both versions of the substring method. Let's run this and see what we get. Okay. So as you can see, we'll get to what's underneath that in just a moment. The length of this string, John, Paul, George, Ringo, is 19. The second one says index of L. That is not the number 1, that is a lowercase letter L. And the lowercase letter L is right there in Paul's name. But remember, the J in John gets index 0. So if you count over, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The L has index 7, and there you have a 7. Now for the third one, it says Beatles substring 4, 9. This version of the substring method has two parameters. The first parameter is the index of where we start the substring. That's a 4. So again, J has index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we begin this substring at the P in Paul. That's at index 4. Now the second parameter is where the substring ends. However, the way this substring method works is as follows. You do not go all the way to index 9 and conclude the substring. You go to the index before 9. So that means this substring will actually consist of characters from index 4 to index 8, not index 9. So the P in Paul was index 4. 5, 6, 7, 8. The G in George is at index 8. And that's what we got for our output. We did not include the first E in George. That's at index 9. But this substring method with two parameters will only go to the second parameter minus 1. It will not go all the way to the second parameter. It will start at the first parameter, but will not go all the way to the second parameter. That's why we get Paul G. Here's your index of method again. This time it's a lowercase o. Now you'll notice in this string we have two lowercase o's. This index of method will return the index of the very first O. Actually, we have three O's, 1, 2, 3. The very first O is right there in John. That's at index 1. And that's why we get a 1 right there. Now we have the substring method again, but as you'll notice, there's only one parameter, not two parameters. When you only have one parameter in the substring method, what's going to happen is you start at that index, in this case index 8, which is the G in George, and you'll go all the way to the end of the string. So that's why we have George Ringo. And finally, we have the two uppercase method that returns the string in all uppercase. And there you see it's all in uppercase. Now, the second thing we're going to talk about today is being able to use input, get the user to input data in a program. To do that, you have to create a scanner object. All right? In order to create a scanner object, you must first import this java.util package. So this line must be at the very beginning of your Java code, before the class. Our author says use import java.util.star. However, if you wanted to top java.util.scanner, and scanner must have an uppercase S, that's also allowed. The next thing you do is in your code, you create a scanner object. I've done that right here. I've decided to name my scanner object KB, which means keyboard. So we say scanner KB. Now scanner is a class, so we're creating an object of this class. So that must equal the keyword new, followed by scanner again. And if you want to have the user just input from the keyboard, after the parentheses, after scanner, you must type this, system.in. That represents the default input mechanism of whatever system you're using. In the case of a computer, it's the keyboard. So this line is how you will create a scanner object so the user can input data. Now, in order to get data that the user types, you need to use one of these four scanner methods. Next int, that'll read an integer. Next double, that reads a double. And then you have two methods for strings. The first one is called next. This reads a one-word string. The definition of a one-word string is a string with no blank spaces in it. If your string does have blank spaces, you must use next line, because the next method will stop reading as soon as it sees a blank space. The next line method, however, will keep reading until it sees the equivalent of the enter key, the \n. Let me show you how this works in this program. I'm still running the same program, but as you can see, there is a prompt waiting for me. Now, right here, I have a print statement that says enter your first name. So I'm waiting for this to enter my first name. I'll type my first name, which is Kyle, and I will hit enter. And as you can see, the program moved on. But before this prompt, how many siblings do you have, was this line, string name equals kb.next. Notice I just typed my first name and it does not have any spaces. Using the next method is what I use for that. And that will put my name, Kyle, into this string variable, which is named name. Now the prompt says, how many siblings do you have? So I need to enter the number of siblings. Well, I'm an only child, so I have 0 siblings. But before I hit enter, let's look at the code again. Here I have another variable called siblings. It is an integer variable, and here I am using kb.nextInt. That will read the integer that I have just typed and store it in the siblings variable when I hit enter. Now, as you can see, there is a third prompt that has appeared. What is your favorite sports team? Now, you might notice in the code I have this extra kb.nextLine. I'll explain what that means in just a moment. Let me finish what this does first. So anyway, I am prompted to enter my favorite sports team. I'll enter my hometown hockey team, St. Louis Blues. Now notice this is a string, it has text, but there are spaces. Naturally, when you're typing a city and something after the city, you'll put a space in between that. That's why for the team, I have a variable named team, but I must use next line, not next, because there are spaces in this string. So when I hit enter, I now get my output. And here on print line, I'm using concatenation to display everything I entered. There is the value of name, there's Kyle, then the word has in quotes, and then this is the siblings variable, there's the 0. And finally, it says siblings and likes, and at the very end of the string, I put the value of the team variable, and that is St. Louis Blues. So that's how you read different types of data in Java. Now, before I end this, let me explain what's going on with this kb.nextLine. It turns out whenever you enter string input, especially if there's an integer involved, you can run into an input error. Watch what happens when I comment out this kb.nextLine. And then I compile and I try to run this program again. I do that, watch this. Now there's all the string output. I'll enter my first name, Kyle, and now I'll enter my number of siblings. Watch the terminal window. Look what happened. It let me enter 0 siblings, but then it didn't let me enter my favorite sports team. It just did the output. Kyle has 0 siblings and likes nobody, apparently. Here's what happened. When I entered the 0 and pressed the enter key, the siblings variable got the 0. But whenever you hit the enter key, it generates a \n character, which you cannot see, but if you can type it, it's got something. So it's like a white space character. That white space character, the \n, is what wound up in the team variable. Since the \n was in the input buffer, the kb.nextLine assumed that was the input and grabbed the \n and didn't allow me to enter my team. That's why I need this kb.nextLine without a variable. It absorbs that \n left over from the integer and allows me to enter my favorite sports team, which I will show you once again. First name, number of siblings, and now I can enter the team. And there you have it. This line to absorb the enter key is needed usually during string input, but especially if there's string input after an integer input. That's what seems to cause input error. So there you have examples of using strings and getting user input in a Java program. If you have any questions, please send me an email at kmuldrow@lbcc.edu.